Alrighty, it looks like it's time to get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lucidchart for HR. We are so excited to have you with us today. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll question. Thank you so much for participating in that, and just kind of look over the results. Great. It looks like we've got a lot of people that are interested in learning some pro tips for working a little bit more efficiently in Lucidchart, also discovering some new ways to use Lucidchart. So we'll be sure to hopefully spark those today and pepper in some tips and tricks along the way. And again, we're so excited to have you with us. So before we get started, I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Steve McGregor, and I am a product pro here at Lucidchart. I've been with Lucid for over a year and a half, and in that time I have well over 1,500 hours in Lucidchart, and I'm really looking forward to showing some of my very favorite things that I've learned in my time here with you guys today, so you can hopefully adopt those and diagram a lot more quickly. So super excited. As we go through today's presentation, we are using Zoom for our webinar platform today. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share those. We love hearing from you and want this to be as interactive as possible. So drop those questions in the Q&A or the chat, and I will have a couple of coworkers here with me answering those questions. So I have Hugh with me today and Jacob, and they are both strategic CSMs and super excited to answer your questions. So feel free to drop those in there. And if you are using the chat, just make sure that that is turned to all panelists and attendees. That way, if anybody else has the same question, we can be sure to get that answered for everybody. And finally, we will be sending out a recorded copy of today's training. So if we move through anything too quickly, if you'd like to share it with your coworker, help them out a little bit, definitely know that you will be receiving a copy of today's training in an email in about 24 to 48 hours. And with that, we'll also be sending you a really cool doc, a Lucidchart document actually, that has some interactive templates, blog posts, videos, and a bunch of resources that will help you be better at Lucidchart. Okay, and with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Now, as I mentioned a couple of times, I'm super excited. And the reason why I'm so excited today is because working with folks in HR, they're usually pretty generally bought into the importance of process mapping and documenting things in a way that others are able to easily learn from, follow, understand, and adopt. And so that said, my job of convincing you that documenting things is a worthwhile process is pretty easy, talking to an HR group that definitely understands that. And so because of that, we get to dive right into all the fun stuff, which I'm really excited about. Now, whether you're working with things like recruiting processes, maybe benefits enrollment, performance management, or maybe something like me and doing onboarding or training, whatever it might be, in HR, you really live in a world that you're completely surrounded by process creation, iteration, and improvement. And so the last thing that you want to do is spend time fighting with platforms like PowerPoint as you try and make org charts or whatever it might be. Nobody has time for that, especially not you. And so that is probably why you're here. And my goal today is to help you make these diagramming tasks super easy and make your charts and diagrams much more effective. So that's what we're going to learn about today. To kind of walk you briefly through the agenda, we're going to be touching on 4 different diagrams that will hopefully spark some ideas for you of new ways you can use Lucidchart. And then in the context of those diagrams, we'll be going through the basics of creating really quick and easy diagrams. We'll kind of transition into automating some key diagrams like org charts. We'll show you how you can create an org chart in just a couple of clicks. It's really cool. And then we will kind of wrap things up by showing some more advanced tips and tricks for more advanced diagramming that will improve the effectiveness of your process maps and diagrams you're creating. So let's go ahead and get started jumping into our first diagram. All right. Now, this is just a basic flow chart that is walking us through the recruiting process. So it's showing how candidates are essentially moving through the pipeline. Now, whether you're creating a new process, maybe you're trying to design something like implementing a new technology or a new business goal, using Lucidchart makes it super easy to collaborate and then iterate on how a new process is going to work. The other thing that I think you're probably relate to is oftentimes there's a way a process is designed to be, and it might not actually be the way that you think it is. And so Lucidchart is a really great place for you to go map out how the process is intended to work. And then you can have your coworkers jump in, maybe the recruiting or management or whoever it might be that's a part of this process. They can come in and say, yes, this is how it is supposed to be behaving, but it actually looks a little bit more like this. So let's look at how we can do that. We'll go ahead and get started here. Now, I'll go ahead and delete this. I've got some training wheels here. We don't really need those. Okay, before we start building things out, I want to walk you through the editor really quickly so that way you understand all the terminology that I use in today's training. So over here on the left, this is your toolbox. So this is where all of your shapes, images, and icons are going to live. At the top of the screen is your standard file menu, so what you're probably familiar with working on in other applications, things like File, Edit, View. Below that is your Properties bar, and this is where you can make your diagram look like $1,000,000 and customize the look and feel of your diagram. And then over here on the far right is the dock. So that's where all of your more advanced functionalities are, things like layers, data linking, conditional formatting, and all of those things. Now, we're not going to dive into all of those today, so if there are any that you're curious about or want more information on, please drop that in the Q&A of the chat, and we will send you those resources. Additionally, you can also go to YouTube, and we have a really great tutorial playlist that has videos that will walk you through all of these things. And then the final thing that I want to direct your attention to is this big orange share button on the top corner. This is what will make communication in your job much, much easier, and how you can centralize everything into one place where you have a single source of truth. So we'll dive into that here in a little bit. We will be covering a lot today, so if you have any questions on anything we covered or you can't quite remember where something was, this feature find is really helpful. So you can type in things like spell check, for example, and not only will Lucidchart take you there, but it's also going to show you where that exists so you can find that on your own. Sometimes it will have additional resources like videos that you could watch and other things like that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and start diagramming. So we'll go over to our toolbox on the left and start dragging out shapes. Now, you'll notice when we drag and drop a shape onto the canvas, a couple of things. So we have these blue squares and these red circles. Now, these blue squares will allow us to resize our shapes, and these red nodes will allow us to diagram without ever leaving the canvas. So really pretty cool here as you're diagramming. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of center this. Now, as you're building out your diagram, changing text is super easy. All you'll do is double click. So you can do things like step 1, double click, step 2, step 3, and do you like the Lucidchart? And with that, we'll go ahead and use those blue nodes so we can resize the shape so that our text will fit in there a little bit better. There we go. And it's looking pretty good. Now, something else that Lucidchart will do really cool, especially in our flow charting shapes, as you guys are building out your processes, is it's going to do a lot of the thinking for you. So Lucidchart recognizes that a decision is being made here, so they know that most likely means it's going to be a yes or a no, and they've pre-populated that text for you, so you don't have to do that. You can also add text to a line by double-clicking anywhere, and you can also double-click anywhere on the canvas to add text. So pretty cool way to more efficiently kind of streamline your diagramming process so everything's happening pretty smooth rather than having to continually come over to the toolbox. So there's a first tip for kind of diagramming a little bit more efficient and effective there. Now you'll notice that there are only a few shape libraries over here in our toolbox, but never fear, Lucidchart has hundreds of shapes you can choose from. So you can go ahead and select either the Shapes button at the bottom of the toolbox or click on this Shapes cogwheel. Either way, it will take you to the Shape Manager, where you'll see there's tons of standard libraries that you can search through and find exactly the shapes that you need. But let's just say we're building out a process diagram and we want to separate it into buckets, much like we did here, by using a swim lane shape. And that's not showing in these default libraries. Totally fine. All we'll do is go to the search button and type in a swim lane, and click go. And Lucidchart will search through all of the shape libraries and find that shape for us really easy. And now you have a couple of options. You can either drag that out and use it once, or if you're going to use it a lot, you can click this pin button and pin that to your toolbox. So now you'll see those container shapes are ready to roll as we diagram. Let's go ahead and build out a quick little swim lane here. Now, something else that's cool is Lucidchart also has some special shapes, and swim lanes happen to be one of them. So you'll notice at the top of the screen this gray ribbon appears, and you're able to add more lanes. And I'm going to kind of center this quickly so you can actually see how it works. We'll move this into our swim lane. But let's just say you kind of struggle with deciding whether or not you want the orientation to be vertical or horizontal. Lucidchart has you covered. All you do is come up to orientation, and you can go ahead and swap that and see whatever it is you end up liking better. There. All right, so now we kind of have the bones of our process built out, and something that you'll find is as you're trying to get your diagrams and processes adopted, the more clear you can make them, the more likely they will be used, because nobody likes spending all this time building out a process and then having nobody use it. I definitely have dealt with that before. So a great way to kind of avoid that is to apply some stylization so people can kind of direct their attention to certain things in your diagram and make it a little bit more digestible. So let's just say you want to make all of your decisions a certain color. You could select that shape, come up to the properties bar, change the color. You can change the text color. You can make it bold, larger font, smaller font. You can change your font. You have a bunch of options here. You're also able to change your line styles. So again, in the properties bar, you can change the color of your line. You could make your line dotted or thicker. You can also change your line style to being straight or curved, whatever you'd like. I'm not going to dive too much more into any of the stylization, but again, that same YouTube playlist I was telling you about before has a lot of different stylization videos you can watch to kind of learn some tips and tricks there. Okay, so now you can see kind of some quick ways to build out your diagram. I'm going to show you one last tip and trick that I love, and if you hold down the Alt or the Option button, you can actually duplicate shapes that will keep all of the formatting you've created. So whether that means you have stylization applied, maybe you have a link applied to it, all of that will persist. So again, hold down Alt Option and you can quickly build and duplicate that. So really helpful for one of those more efficient tips and tricks there is to test that out. Alrighty, so once you've built this out, the next step kind of in process creation or iteration is getting some feedback. So like I mentioned before, maybe you build this out how it should behave, but you need the people that are actually going to be doing it to look over it and say, yes, this makes sense, or no, it doesn't. There's a couple ways you can do that. The first thing to know is that Lucidchart is cross-platform and cross-browser. So that means if you're on a Mac or a PC, if you're on Google Chrome or Firefox, whatever it might be, you're going to be able to access Lucidchart. So really, really cool there. The next thing is we'll go ahead and come up to this big orange share button, and Lucidchart will ask you to title your diagram. So we'll go ahead and have that titled. We'll click Save. And now you're able to either type in email addresses for people that you want to share it with, or if you're on an enterprise account, they will pre-populate. So we could type in he here or Jacob, and now we're allowed to give them whatever permissions we would desire. So let's just say that we wanted them to come in and kind of look things over and just comment. Awesome, we can go ahead and click that. And now he and Jacob are both going to receive a email notification letting them know that a document has been shared with them. You can at any time come back to share and click advanced and change their permissions. So maybe you want them to be able to edit, maybe you want them to only be able to view. At any point, you have complete control over changing those permission levels. All right, now something else that's really neat about this is when he and Jacob come into this document, we will see a little icon at the top with the letter of their name. So you can see this little H here. It looks like he's jumped into the document. You can see that she's in. And now what we can do is maybe we want his opinion on whether or not she likes Lucidchart. So we can select that decision shape, right click and select add comment. We're able to @mention he here and say, what do you think? And click comment. And now he is going to get a notification that we have left a comment for her. So this is really helpful, again, as you're working with other departments. You can real-time collaborate and make sure that everybody's on the same page and that your processes are working for everybody. Now, let's say he and Jacob jump into this document and they are on this first page, and so they're not sure what exactly it is I'm talking about. Where this might be relevant is if you have a very large process, maybe with a bunch of different steps, and you want specific feedback on a step. All they have to do is come into this little comment panel and click on this pin locator, and it will take them to wherever that is located directly on the canvas. So they can see exactly what we're talking about. And you can see his name pops up, and we know that she's looking at that shape right now. So really pretty cool there. And in fact, he can even sort and see what comments are associated with just her. She can also see what ones have been resolved and what comments are active. So pretty cool there as you're working together. Now, this might kind of spark some thoughts like, oh my goodness, I don't want to share this with somebody because what if they mess it up? I can relate to that. But Lucidchart has a great feature to make sure that that doesn't happen. You will notice that we have not yet saved our document. There is a reason for that. So Lucidchart is automatically saving every couple of minutes. And if we come over to this history button on the dock on the right, you can see that there is a history of everything that is happening in this document every couple of minutes. And you can also see who has made changes, when the changes were made. So at any point, you're able to go back in time and either restore your document to the previous version, or you can create a new document from your revision. So you have a couple of options there, and Lucidchart has your back. You don't have to worry about ever losing where you're at. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump into this next section, but before I do that, I'm going to stop and just check for questions quickly. So again, if you have questions, drop those in the chat or the Q&A, and we will move on in just a second. All right, one of the questions was if there's a more complex swim lane. That's a great question. We do have one that's used a lot more often. It's called a multi-dimensional swim lane. So that might be what you're looking for, where you have kind of columns and rows rather than just the row. Might help a little bit for you there. Great question. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the next section. He and Jacob are still answering some questions, and then if any that they don't get to, we'll be sure to answer in the Q&A at the end. All right. So the second diagram, or the second portion that we're going to go through is how you can automate some more standard diagrams that you're probably manually building out every day, hopefully not ripping your hair out while you do it in PowerPoint. And let's look at how we can do just a couple quick clicks and create this in Lucidchart. So with org charts, you have two options. Option one is you can build an org chart from scratch completely. And option two is that you can automate that. So that means if you have a Google spreadsheet or maybe a CSV that you've exported from your HR system, you can import that automatically into Lucidchart and have it build for you. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. We're going to come back to the shapes library we were talking about before and search for org chart here. And we'll add that org chart shape library, and you'll see again that's going to populate in our toolbox, and we'll go ahead and select import data. Now, as I mentioned before, you have a couple of different data sources you can import from. So things like Google Sheet, Excel, CSV, Bamboo HR. If you have a different HR platform, oftentimes you can export that as a CSV. But we'll go ahead and select CSV for today and click Next and search for org chart here. We'll find my demo file to show you. Let's see. Too many files. There it is. All right, Lucidchart demo org chart. We'll go ahead and click open. Now, this wizard is going to walk you through step by step everything that you need to know about importing your org chart. And if you have any questions, definitely click on this org chart import tutorial at the bottom, and you'll be able to have, again, a video that'll walk you through it. So the first thing that you need to do is, or the first question that will be asked of you is, how does your table identify a supervisor? Is it either by an ID number or by a name? And this is how Lucidchart is going to automatically map that out, is by understanding how these line up. So for ours, we have it set up by ID number, so we'll go ahead and leave that. And then we want to make sure that we match these up. So what represents an employee ID for us? In our sheet, it's an ID, and yours, it might be something else. And then you'll do the same for supervisor. Go ahead and click Next. All right, now it looks like name's already mapped up for us. We'll go ahead and change role to title and image URL to photo URL and click Next. Now you're able to either create one large org chart, or if you want to separate it by perhaps departments or maybe separate geographic locations, things like that, you can go ahead and click this separate org chart and they will be on separate pages. But for today, we're just going to create an org chart for our org and click Finish. And boom, super, super easy. And we have a beautiful org chart ready to roll. And it saved us all of that manual work that you would have to do in PowerPoint. So let's go ahead and change our page settings so it fits our diagram. We're going to come over to the page settings button here on the right-hand side and turn on auto tiling. And that means that Lucidchart is going to expand the canvas to fit the contents rather than us having to manually do that. Okay, now you have a couple of cool options here. So you'll notice that the toolbox over here on the left has been replaced by an org chart toolbox. And what that means is we're able to change the layout style, and we have a couple of different options here, really whatever suits your fancy. You can also change your horizontal spacing, your vertical spacing, whatever you'd like to do there. You also are able to change what the shapes look like. So maybe you want the image on the left-hand side, maybe you want it to fill up the shape, maybe you don't want images and you just want names. You have all of those different options. And you can also customize what employee fields are showing and in what order they're showing. So a couple of different options you have there. All right, now you'll remember with the swim lane shape that when we had the shape selected, that ribbon populated at the top of the screen. Now org charts are very similar. You can change and customize each individual employee by selecting them and then going to this ribbon at the top of the screen where you can change what that displays like. You can manage their fields. So maybe your supervisors, you don't want to show salary, but other people you do for transparency. Whatever you like, you can go ahead and change that here. And you can also change things like their photo, or if you've changed all of these things and you want it to then match everything, you can clear all those overrides that you've applied. Now it's really easy to change the order of things or to add people to your org chart. You can either do it over here in the toolbox on the left by clicking on these little 6 dots. You can drag and drop, or you can do the same over here on the canvas. You can select an individual, drag and drop, and pretty easily make those adjustments on the canvas. Okay, now that is primarily what we're going to go through with org charting today, but there are a lot of other cool things you can do. So different filtering options, if you want to filter and just see maybe what ones contain a pay parity or performance review numbers, kind of how they're doing. You can also apply other overlays to get quick insights, and then apply things like conditional formatting to again, see more insights like pay parity, salary, performance reviews, people that need additional coaching, people that are moving or transitioning positions, things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this quick poll question. And if you will let me know if you're interested in more specialized Lucidchart training for your team, if those are some things that would be helpful for your team to learn. And then additionally, there's probably other things that we haven't covered yet today that you might want to know. Definitely let us know, and then we will continue on to the next section. All right, guys, thanks so much for answering that poll question. And if you didn't answer the poll question and then wish you would have, feel free again to drop things in the chat or the Q&A, and Jacob and he will get back to me with that. All right, let's go ahead and transition into our next section. Now, as we mentioned before, it is very imperative that as you're building out processes that you are able to drive adoption with those and gain traction with others, and they're actually using them. And so you're able to create in Lucidchart kind of a single source of truth where everything can come together. And so rather than people having to come look at this process and then go search for maybe the documentation they have to fill out, maybe they have to send somebody an email or they have to fill out a form, you can keep that all here in one place. So it's really easy to access and everybody's using it. So for example, this is a process flow that's showing, again, that application through interview, hiring, and onboarding process. Now, part of that might mean that if there's a job vacancy that needs to be filled, there is a job requisition form. And so this is an example of how you could connect this to something like a Google Doc, maybe a Google form, whatever it might be that's external, and kind of supplement your diagram with all the resources people need. You're also able to break things down. So let's say we have this large process, but during part of it, the HR coordinator needs to contact and schedule the interview. So there's other additional steps for that. But if you put them all here, it would get very overwhelming. So you're able to actually break your process down into 2 sections. So you can see here, this is what that particular part of the process looks like. But then you can come back and say, well, this is what the overall process looks like. So let's go ahead and look at how we can do this in Lucidchart. Alrighty. So the first thing we want to do is we want to connect our shape to an external resource. So we'll go ahead and use the same example we used before and jump into this Google Doc and come over to share. And we'll go ahead and pull a URL that we can use and jump back into Lucidchart. Now, all you'll need to do is select this and come up to this Actions button on the top right-hand side of the screen. And you'll have a couple of options here. So you're able to do some things with layers. We will skip over that and cover it here in a minute. You can link to a page or you can link to something externally. So again, Google Doc is obviously external. We'll click external link, paste that URL here, click done, and now we're able to jump into that sample job requisition. Now, the other option that we talked about is being able to link this to another page. So you can see at the bottom of our screen here, we have this sub-process that we want to connect to. So we'll again do the same thing, click this shape and come up to this Actions button. Only this time, we're going to select Link to Page because this is internal within the document. And then you're able to select whatever page you want to link to and click Done. So then when we click that, it will pull us to the sub process. Now you'll notice that this little pop-up comes that says you have to press Control-Shift-Click to use the link. That is because it would probably be really irritating if you were accidentally jumping all over the place while you're trying to navigate and edit your process. So when this is in view-only mode or you've shared it with somebody, they'll just have to click it. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. But I did want to show you kind of a more advanced tip for those of you that have been using Lucidchart a little bit longer. I highly recommend making clickable objects look like a button. So all you have to do is select your shape, come up to the properties bar and add a shadow. So we'll go ahead and click turn on shadow here, and you'll see it just kind of gives it the appearance of a button. Now, you'll notice that I have this little finger icon here. I always like to have something that makes it look like, hey, this is interactive. So we'll come over to our toolbox and search for interactive and go ahead and click go. And I'm going to do an icon search here. And then you're able to add this little finger icon so that it looks interactive so people know that that's a clickable resource. So a couple quick tips and tricks for you there. Now, the other thing that might happen with this is you built out your process and maybe you need to hand this out either in a meeting so that everybody has something to look at, or like an onboarding, or maybe you want a document for people to have on their desk for reference. How do you then take this document and pull it out of Lucidchart? Let's go up to the standard file menu again. We'll go ahead and click File and Download As. Now you have a couple options here, but we're going to go with PDF for today. And it's going to pull you into this download settings. And here you have a bunch of different options. So again, you can change the file format. You can have as many pages printed as you would like. And the one thing I really want to point out to you that's super cool is this scale button. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. I would assume you probably are. If you've been diagramming in another platform, it's really frustrating when your diagram starts to stretch over a bunch of different pages and then it prints really skiwampus and you can't really use it. So then you're trying to reformat things and move them around so they fit on one page. Lucidchart will do that automatically for you. So all you have to do is click Fit to Page and it will print very beautifully on a paper for you, and you don't have to worry about resizing things in the actual editor. So kind of cool tip for you there. Now, inevitably, as you're building this out, there probably is going to be somebody that needs to see it that does not have a Lucidchart license. So oftentimes maybe a new hire that you're bringing on, or if you need to involve like an external consultant in part of this or a customer, all you'll have to do is come up to the share button. Again, the big orange share button on the top right-hand side. And this time we're going to come over to publish on the left. And you'll have a couple of options here. So the first thing you can do is you can publish this as a full document URL, which essentially means that it's going to remain a dynamic interactive diagram. So those links we have created, any layers, presentations, those will all continue to work. The other option we have is a PDF. That is going to be a static image, so not quite as robust. And then we also have an area selection. So if you wanted just a part of your diagram to be shared, you can do that here. The really cool thing about this is it's going to auto update. So if you publish this as a URL, share it with the customer, you can be confident that they will always have the most up-to-date version of that document. And you'll see it's going to create this publish link at the bottom. You can copy that, go ahead and paste it and share it. The other way you might want to share this is if you perhaps have like an internal wiki where you keep all of your resources, and obviously for a onboarding process like this, you probably have a recruiter and a manager and a trainer involved, and you want them all to have one place they can access this document. You can go ahead and come over to embed here and make sure you activate your embed code. So there'll be this little blue activate button here. You want to be sure to press activate and then just copy this, paste it, and you are good to go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause for a minute. It looks like we might have a couple questions to answer, and then we will continue on. Alrighty, it looks like we're doing okay. Jacob and he are still answering questions for you guys, and we will stop and answer all of the remaining ones again in the last little bit here. Okay, now the other thing you might want to do with this doc, if you don't have an internal wiki but you use something like Confluence, for example, or Google Doc, is you can actually jump into that. So we'll come into Confluence here. and we've created this Confluence page. We can come up to this Insert More Content button, add a Lucidchart diagram, and Confluence is going to pull up a very robust view of our editor. It's going to look much like it would if you just went into your browser and opened up Lucidchart's document page, and we'll be able to select a document here. So we'll say, all right, we've got this process diagram we're working on. And the cool thing about Confluence is, very similarly to that publish URL, this is also going to automatically update and remain dynamic and persist all of the links and slides and things like that that you've put into it. So pretty cool for you there. So you can see your diagram here. We'll click Update, and you'll notice that it's now going to be showing in that Confluence page. And again, like I mentioned before, you can click on the different pages here, you can click on different links, and all those things will persist. Okay. Which brings us to our final example that I wanted to share with you guys today. And that is something that tends to happen, I think, in the world of HR, is that there are a lot of really big, awesome ideas that can be super hard to share with somebody on something like a Google Doc or a spreadsheet, because they're just much more dynamic and complex, and there's a lot there. And so Lucidchart can really help you to get those ideas, put them somewhere in a way that other people can see them and understand them. So I've actually created this presentation in Lucidchart. Let's go ahead and just see kind of what that looks like. We'll navigate through it. You can see we've set it up so that it kind of draws your attention to the different parts, so that our attendees really are focused on what we want them to see. We've got things like mind maps, Venn diagrams, and yeah, it's really helpful as you're trying to kind of share your ideas. You can also see current plans and future state there with these different layers we've created. So let's look at how we can do all of this. All right. Now, the first thing to kind of talk about is, you might not initially think, okay, mind maps make sense for HR, but they really do. So if you're in a meeting with maybe your team, or you're just brainstorming, mind map is a really great place to start. And Lucidchart has some really cool functionalities. So again, you'll just go to your shape library and search for mind map, and your mind map shape library will come up. You can also search for Venn diagram, and you'll see we have a library for that. Once you've added those, they'll populate over here. And with a mind map, you can just drag this shape out, and we have a bunch of keyboard shortcuts, so things like tabs that will build more child and sibling ideas. If you want to learn more about that, let us know, and we have a great YouTube tutorial that will show you how to do that. But you can also import and export your mind map, and something kind of cool to keep in mind as you're brainstorming as a team. Similarly with Venn diagrams, you'll see you've got these really cool shapes you can start building out and build your Venn diagram here in Lucidchart. So pretty cool there. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how we might use this to build a presentation. Now, the first thing that's important is making sure that it's set up in a way that looks really crisp and clear, so people's attention is focused on the right thing. So best practice here, anytime you're sharing a document, building a presentation, is to come over to page settings on the right and make sure that you have auto tiling turned off. And that means, as I mentioned before, that is what will make your canvas expand. Here you have the ability to manually control that. So you can have your canvas fit perfectly to your diagram, and it will look a lot better. You're also able to come and turn off your grid lines, because you'll see when you've got a bunch of grid lines, it can be kind of distracting. So if you turn that off, it's just going to look a lot more polished and crisp. And then the final way to kind of optimize this is to turn off your line connections. So as we mentioned before, it was really, really great when we had these red nodes populating so we could build our diagram out really quick. But when you have something that looks more like this, it's a lot easier if we just turn those off, so we're not drawing lines all over the place. Okay, so we've turned those off, and now we can go ahead. I'll turn my grid lines back off. Now we can go ahead and build out our presentation. Now what you might do is you might come over to slides on the dock on the right and click plus slide. I am going to advise you to do this a different way, because when you do that, you're going to have to stretch things, move them, and you can see it can be really irritating to do that. What I would suggest doing is, rather than creating a slide that way, if you select the content you want on your slide, so for example, let's have this content. So we'll just select it all, we'll highlight it and click plus slide. Lucidchart is going to pre-fit that so that it's automated, it's fit perfectly, and you don't have to worry about resizing and moving things around. Now, you'll remember from the presentation, it was really great to direct attention to specific parts of this. All you have to do is select it. So maybe we just want this core people operations part to stand out. And you'll come back to this slide, click the little edit button, highlight selected shapes. And now when we click present, it's going to direct your attention just to that part of the process. So pretty cool there. All right. And then there aren't any crazy animation features in Lucidchart. So if you're huge into animations, you're always more than welcome to send this to Google Slides, and you can go ahead and add animations there. Okay, and finally, let's look at this current state versus future state org structure. Let's talk a little bit about this and why you might use this. So in HR, there's a couple of things that you're probably working on. One of those is continually iterating on processes, and the other is expanding the org structure and making sure that you have good hiring plans. And so being able to see a visual of before and after in the same spot really helps people grasp that concept of this is what it looks like now and what it will look like versus tabbing between different pages or documents. It's going to be a lot easier to compare and contrast. So all you'll do is you're going to come over to the doc again on the right and click on layers. And this is where you're able to add layers. So all you do is click plus layer, and best practice is to always title that. Click enter. And you'll see that the layer is grayed out. That means you're able to start adding things to the layer. They'll look more vibrant, and you can start building that out. I've already done this, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and we'll come back to our base layer. Now, let's click on our current state and see what's there. It looks like this is our current state, which is correct, and our future state is correct as well. If you want to move things to another layer, you can right-click and select Move to Layer, and you can move it to wherever you would like it to be. We'll go ahead and double-click. Now, when we initially come into this document, we probably just want to see our current state. So we'll go ahead and hide that future state by clicking this Hide button and click Sync Visibility. So again, when you come in, you're just going to see that current state. Now, you will probably want to create buttons that will turn on your current and future state. And I created these by just pulling out the process shape. We added that shadow here, turn that on, and it looks really crisp. And then you can go ahead and do the Command K or the action button to add those actions. Now, if you remember before, we decided to hold off layers until now. So let's talk a little bit about layers. You have a couple of options here. So you can toggle layers, which means when you press it, it's going to turn that on and off. You can also show layers or hide layers. And you can also have multiple actions. So maybe you want to turn on the future state but turn off the current state, you can do that. So if we see future plans, we probably want to turn on the future state. And so we're going to say we want to show layers and we want to show the future state. And we want to add another action that's going to hide layers, and we're going to hide the current state. We'll click done. Now, similarly over here, when we want to see the current state, we want to show the current state, and we want to add another button that is going to hide the future state. So we'll click done. So now when we click this button, you can see the future plans or the current plans. So really helpful for seeing that visual pretty quick and easy for you there. Alrighty, folks. Well, that is all I had prepared for you today. I'm going to go ahead and launch this last poll. If you will just let me know how I did today. We are always wanting to do better and improve, so please let me know, and then we will spend this last 15 minutes answering any questions that he and Jacob have not yet gotten to or that you feel like asking now. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Please let us know how we did today, and we will go ahead and get started with the Q&A. One of the questions was, will we be sending out these resources? Yes, we will send out an email with both a copy of today's presentation and also an interactive document that will walk you through templates, other blog posts, best practices, tips and tricks, resources, YouTube videos, all those different things. So we will be sending that out probably in the next 24 to 48 hours. Renee, great question. We had the question of how the earlier chart showed a box on the left with the purpose of the chart. So that is specifically for the webinar. We will be sending in that follow-up document. You will get copies of all the templates that should have that on the left. Also, if you go into the template library and search for any HR template, they will all have a box on the right-hand side with the purpose of the chart and videos and other supplemental resources to kind of help you there. Great question. All right, let's walk through one more time how you can share your document with somebody that does not have a Lucidchart account. So all you'll do is come up to the orange share button and come down to advanced on the bottom left-hand side. And then you'll see over here in these options on the left, publish. And here you're able to do either a URL, a PDF, or an area selection. And I'd recommend always doing the full document URL because that is going to be a dynamic, robust view of your document where all of the links will work. Or you could do the PDF, it's going to be more static. And then the area selection, I'll show you, will just publish part of your document. So maybe you just want to show this part. When you select this, we'll go ahead and open a new window. It's just going to show that part. So pretty cool. And that's going to update again automatically. And so that way you can share with people that do not have a Lucidchart account. Alrighty, folks, thanks again for joining us today. We'll go ahead and give you a little bit of time back, and then keep an eye out for that recording, also the interactive doc you'll be receiving. And thanks again so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you with us today. Hopefully we will see you again soon, and enjoy the rest of your week.